Good morning, everyone. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. So today is Friday, and it's about 11:24. Pretty cold day. It's a November day. It is definitely November-like weather. We had a pretty sweet fall this year. It was pretty mild for the most part. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good. Getting excited for Thanksgiving, Turkey Day, and all those good things. Have some shows coming up with Quantum, which I'm excited. December 1st, we will be at this really awesome venue called Hey Sailor. So I just started promoting that. We're going to be doing a Quantum show there. And then a couple weeks after that, we will be playing at this showcase at Rock Harbor, which is in Thomaston, or Rockland, I should say, the Rockland area of Maine. And there's been some promotion for that show, and that's been kind of been up for a while. And that's going to be a showcase with a few other bands. So pretty excited about those two shows, and we might be doing a show also coming up in Portland, which would be great. Which would be cool if everything works out. We have not really. We've played in Portland a few times, but it's been a while, and it's been. I don't know. I always find it's kind of a hard thing to kind of get something going there sometimes. Used to play there a lot with a few other bands, and those one of the bands in particular had a pretty good thing going for a while. We actually made some really good connections to play down there and to uh, kind of network with other bands, and we got to play some really great gigs down there. But it took us a long time of like steady, really hitting the pavement, hitting it hard all the time, and we eventually got some traction. But none of the projects that I've had since then have really been down there enough, or have been in that kind of area to circulate, or area of circulation to kind of get our bearings. It's always been like these one-off things, and so we'll see. But I do like Portland. I think there's some great venues. There's there's obviously some great music going on down there. So it's always great. So we'll see what happens. And of course, when if this thing whole thing comes together, it'll be a really great show. I think it'll be a really great billing. So it's a pretty big thing, I think, for us if it happens. But stay tuned for further developments with that. Probably we'll know more specifics around it, in the next week or two, I would imagine. So yeah, so today's show, I've been cranking out the videos for Film Fanatic. It's been a total blast. It's been really cool. There's been quite a few new subscribers, which has been awesome, and there's been a lot of folks commenting on some of these videos, which has been great. I have the videos that I post for this channel, Film Fanatic. I always post them on my personal page, which is Jason Dean on Facebook, and then obviously they go on the Film Fanatic Facebook page, and then there are about three other groups on Facebook of where I post the videos also, and there's like three or four groups or pages that are movie pages, and they are all about or they more or less focus or specialize with on everything in the exploitation horror world. Really cool, really awesome pages, and I've been sharing a lot of these videos to a lot of these pages, and since then I've had some new people checking out the videos, and there's been an increased amount of traffic on the page or on this channel, so it's been really cool, and I'm always amazed by it. I'm always like really excited that the things that seem to get the most traction, or where people seem to be the most engaged with, are always around the reviews, the videos that I do on the more kind of obscure exploitation movies. That's been a really great surprise. And that is my favorite love. It and I find it for me really personally inspiring to kind of want to keep doing this, and to keep cranking out the videos, and to keep learning about this whole thing, because it's been about a year since I've been doing a YouTube channel, so it's been a really fun experience. And it's it's all, I kind of feel, well, like everything, it's all about, baby steps, and hopefully getting better, you know along the way, getting a hopefully acquiring a better skill set on how to get your point across, and to try to make the videos fun. And again, I I love all kinds of movies, so I'm always, throwing in other things. I love variety, and all things art, really. Like, as far as music, I love all kinds of music. And when it comes to films, I love all kinds of films. We all have our natural things that we kind of go to on a regular basis, but that being said, it's always a thing of where I love to keep an open mind, but always check out new stuff and different things. So today's show is on a director, and specifically on a film um, that I've been actually wanting to talk about, and I don't know why I haven't done it yet. But he's one of my all-time favorite directors. I have mentioned him before. I have talked about him before. One of my all-time favorite directors is Akira Kurosawa, who is a just an incredible director, and one of the most prolific directors I've ever come across. Most well known for the Seven Samurai. He has a career that spans literally decades, from like the late 40s all the way up into the 90s. Like, amazing. He passed away a few years back, but just for me, one of the most inspirational directors, and personally also, like, he his catalog of films are just staggering. I've seen most of his films. There are talks of where there's up to 85 to about 100, or possibly over 100 films to his credit. One of the most prolific directors. I In my travels and in kind of my research, and me, checking out different films, and then especially when I get into certain directors, I've come across a couple of directors that have, massive, massive bodies of work. And I kind of feel like the directors that I know of, and directors, Akira Kurosawa, I've been a fan of for many, many, many years. Akira Kurosawa and, Stanley Kubrick are pretty much my favorite directors of all time when it comes to kind of big Hollywood films. I've done a show on Stanley Kubrick, of course. I'm going to do one eventually where I'm just talking about Kurosawa. I've always been a huge fan of Japanese culture. I've always been, and one of the big things that kind of got me into it is I used to practice martial arts for most of my life. I haven't done it in a very, very long time. I might at some point get back into it. But martial arts have always been a really, really important part to my life, and really great with, emphasizing or maintaining focus in your life, and trying to figure a way to balance things, emotionally, physically, and even symbolically, metaphorically. And also the discipline that's involved. There, I play music. I attempt to have a music career, and my main instrument that I play a few other instruments, but my main instrument is a drum set. And over the years, I've come in contact and have just read, and also have read lots of interviews with lots of musicians. And I've always felt, and in interviews, it's always come up where there are so many similarities between the kind of the mindset of practicing martial arts and also music. There's a form of, there's a skill set. There are all these levels that you can try to strive to reach. There's a real level of determination. There's a lot of focus. There's a lot of creativity along with those concepts. There's a lot of the main thing I've always felt is discipline, and so I have always been thinking about things in those terms. And I've come across lots of musicians who have had backgrounds in martial arts, and they apply like a lot of the disciplines and the whole kind of aesthetic and that whole universe of trying to better yourself is exactly the same as someone who is a full-on martial arts practitioner or a musician or artist. It's kind of the same mode of operation and the same kind of areas of discipline. There's there, to me it just so overtly overlaps, and it's kind of one of the same thing. And through that, like, I've gotten really into Japanese culture, especially around reading historical things about the art of ninjutsu and the code and the stories of the samurai, the idea of extreme focus, that extreme attention to detail, the reaching that balance factor. And I've always been attracted to martial arts films and samurai films, and of course, the first movie I ever came across by Kurosawa was The Seventh Samurai, which is an incredible masterpiece. It's his film that he's most well known for. He did go on to make many samurai films, but he also did all kinds of films. He made lots of later on in his career, he did lots of like melodramas, kind of surrealist melodramas. One movie I can think of, which was one of his later films, which is a masterpiece, is this film called In Dreams, and it's essentially about mortality and getting older, and kind of facing, reflecting on your life. He did, and then he also did these large, epic scale war movies. So many different things, so many different elements. And before I get into the film I'm going to be talking about, and again, as far as prolific directors, I have to say Kurosawa is probably the most prolific director that I'm aware of, as far as just the sheer body of the amount of movies that he put out throughout his career. And also the other director, which I kind of just discovered, I was aware, I've seen some of his films, growing up, and in various areas, and VHS, and he's an exploitation director. Jess Franco. He was a director from Spain. He is. I actually think he's still alive. He his body of work is just staggering. There are still movies of his that are still being kind of unearthed and also released, and he's also one of my favorite directors. Uh, Obviously, very very different from Kurosawa. Kurosawa directs these big, giant, kind of epic, sweeping films with bigger budgets and really great actors. There's always amazing cinematography. These films are always just like high art. I always feel, and Jess Franco is one of the biggest names, and one of the greatest names in the world of exploitation. He's done you know sex exploitation movies. He's done crime exploitation movies, horror exploitation movies. He's also responsible for a lot of classic giallo films. But the you know the there's it's really, you can't really compare either director to each other, because stylistically they're kind of worlds apart. The one commonality I would say is that the sheer body of work that both directors have put out throughout their careers is just staggering. And I almost think Jess Franco he might be the most prolific director that I have come across. Like, it's wild. I've even seen interviews with people who run a lot of these companies, these boutique labels that put out Blu-rays and 4Ks, and they're they're always just like blown away by how many new things that they discover that yet they want to still reissue. even in that level, and it's pretty wild. But Kurosawa, I mean, I could spend a I could spend 3 hours just talking about his films, his his impact as a director, one of the most iconic directors. I mean, you're talking like decades of films. Seven Samurai in '54, Rashomon in 1950. Today's film, which I'm going to be talking about, which is all around my favorite Kurosawa movie, which is Ran, which came out in '85. Akira to Live in 1952. Dreams 1990. Yojimbo '61. Throne of Blood. These are kind of getting more into like this his samurai films. They're all just uh, masterpieces. Uh, Kagemusha in 1980, High and Low in '63, The Hidden Fortress, 1958, which is just an amazing movie. I I had heard about that movie quite a few years ago, and I saw it for the first time. I think it was last year, The Hidden Fortress, and it came out in 1958. And Hidden Fortress is amazing. And the way I discovered that movie and heard about it was I had seen an interview with George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, and he's talked a lot about in this one interview. He was talking a lot about his influences and films that really inspired him. And he talked a lot, and he's always talked a lot about the inspiration of the writer and philosopher Joseph Campbell, who has done so much wonderful, extensive work on mythology. And that's how I'm a huge Joseph Campbell fan, and I've talked about him before in other videos. But I discovered him through by reading, or actually by seeing an interview with George Lucas where he talked about how Joseph Campbell just was such an inspiration for him as far as the power of myth and looking at throughout the ages of civilization how mythology plays a role in how we are as humans and what that means, and also his take on you know uh, kind of the origins of organized religion. And so George Lucas was tremendously influenced by the work of Joseph Campbell. But in this one interview I saw, he was talking about the film that he felt was the most inspirational for him was The Hidden Fortress by Akira Kurosawa, especially when it came to the first movie he directed, which was Star Wars, the very first Star Wars movie. I almost said The Force Awakens. Star Wars: A New Hope. And he said The Hidden Fortress was like the biggest influence on his film. He even like kind of structured a lot of the story, and even the way the look of the film is based off of The Hidden Fortress. And I remember, and I had never seen The Hidden Fortress, so I did go out and rent it with that in my mind, and I was blown away by how you really see so many similarities with the structure of the story, kind of the aesthetic, some of the same characters, around say Darth Vader, particularly around like the Luke Skywalker character. You really see how the Hidden Fortress really influenced Star Wars. Really, really interesting, and it's essentially a samurai epic. Um, so I definitely it's one that's I have to say the Hidden Fortress is one of my favorite films, and that was again I did not see that film until like last year pretty much, but such a masterpiece. Another so many great films, but Sujiro in '62, Dursa Uzala in '75, Redbeard in '65, Stray Dog, which is going back many years, 1949, The Idiot in 1951, um, Madayo 1993, The Drunken Angel in '48, Dodestikon 1970. Um, he also did a version of the Magnificent Seven in 1960. Sanshiro Shigura 1943, Living in 2022. Or actually, sorry, X that. Not he did not direct the Magnificent Seven. But just, I mean, it's staggering the amount of work that he did. I mean, just incredible. And there's so many films that since there's been the typical list of films that he's directed. There's been so many films that have also been released along the way. Just staggering, staggering. And an amazing documentary about Kurosawa that came out a few years back. That it's basically about his life, and he really really immensely struggled with depression. At one point, he tried killing himself while he was shooting a film, and it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to watch, and he's so open about his experience around his suicide and his depression. And then he did survive and went on to make even more films. But my favorite film of Kurosawa, unfortunately, which is kind of terrible, I don't own any of his films. Actually, the only film I own Ron on Blu-ray, and that is this movie here. This is the DVD copy, but the Ron version I do have. I do have Ron on Blu-ray. This movie is just epic and sweeping in every conceivable way. The uh, the scope of this film is just so magnificent, and the story of this film is basically a Kurosawa's adaptation of King Lear, which was written by Shakespeare. It's like a modern at the time it was like a modern adaptation of Shakespeare's King Lear, and it's basically about this great lord, this warlord, this king, who at the later part of his life decides to divide up his kingdom and give his sons equal power, and then there, which leads to all of this infighting and where they're all trying to take over and usurp the power. And there are some scenes in this film that are just so sweeping and incredible and epic in every way. It's also there's one sequence in between of where the emperor or the king's castle is basically crumbling and he's under in total invasion, and all of his men are just being slaughtered, and his castle's literally burning to the ground, there's like just crimson blood everywhere, and it's so unbelievable. I mean, it's one of the most incredible epic like battle scenes I've ever seen in my life. It might be the most epic thing I've ever seen. The cinematography is just incredible, and it's a longer film. It's like close to 3 hours, but it is a complete masterpiece. I remember seeing Ron when I got into Kurosawa when I was in or actually when I was in college, and I believe my first movie, like probably most people, your first introduction to Kurosawa was the Seventh Samurai, and that's just incredible and one of the greatest movies ever made. And after seeing The Seventh Samurai, I'd seen a few of his other films, Jimbo and whatnot, and I got really into his films. And then I started seeking out a lot of his films. And I remember it was probably a few years, maybe 2 or 3 years after I got into his work when I first saw Ron, and I was just like, my jaw dropped, and I was just like, instantly that film became my favorite of all time. Um, the attention to detail, the scope of how he would put these films together, it's just staggering. And also this was the time of where everything that you saw was essentially real living sets. It was all a reliance on building these alternate universes. There was no computer generated effects, no blue screen, and to see the how he could pull these films off, and especially with Ron, with the scope, the cinematography, Just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Truly, truly inspiring. Truly inspiring. The music, everything. I mean, you talk about really having a, you know, transcending experience. I was watching a couple of YouTube guys talk about the way people, view movies and how people look at movies. And the show they were doing was mostly on streaming, but they were talking about how they kind of look at it in like two different categories, like how people are, in their general relationship to movies. It was kind of interesting, but they were talking on how some people look at film as just being like pure and total entertainment, and then other people look at it to be like where it's a full on kind of artistic or like immersive experience of where they want to leave the world behind for a little bit and learn about this new thing, or forget about their daily mundane experience. And then you have other people who have more of a casual thing where they look at movies as just background or pure entertainment, and they can you know put on a movie and have that going in the background, and do other things. And I think that's like, I look at that as being a pretty fair kind of judgment. Like, I know people that will throw in a movie and or TV show, whatever, and they don't care where they watch it, whether it's on their phone or on a computer or whatever, and they'll just have it playing in the background, and they'll do other things, or they'll just have it play, and then they'll sit every few minutes and watch it. And then you have people who don't do that. They'll put in a movie, and that film, that experience gets that gets the focus for those 2 hours or whatever it is. Like, you're present, you're experiencing what's happening then and there. I'm definitely that kind of person. I can't, like, yeah, there's obviously movies that I have that are just kind of like throwaway movies I don't necessarily like, but they might have some kind of thing about them that I like. And I can't really put even a movie like that in and just be like, okay, I'm gonna do some laundry, or I'm gonna, do this or that, do some cleaning. I do that if I'm gonna do things like that. I'll do that with, like, I'll put on some music and I'll have that. But for movies, I can't. I have to sit and watch, and I do first and foremost think of movies as in terms of just like really good, hopefully good entertainment. But I want that experience. I want that immersive experience, and I'm very, very particular too about how I watch a movie. I can't really. I won't watch a movie on a laptop. I won't listen to a movie with only using headphones. I definitely won't like. Um, watch a movie on my phone. I mean, no way. So I definitely am more in the other category. And Kurosawa's films, really are. I mean, not only are they're sweeping epic films, but they are true experiences. They are really about having that immersive experience of where it's kind of a transformative experience. And I think Ron is that movie that does that, where you know people still make great films. I think there are a lot of great filmmakers still out there, but I also feel like what Kurosawa was doing as a filmmaker is something no one does really as much anymore. I mean, I think Scorsese is one of those people that can tell a really complex story and bring you to this unique universe in that process. I feel like Killers of the Flower Moon, his last movie, is an example of that. But I think it's pretty rare that there's it's I think Ron represents kind of, and Kurosawa's style represents kind of a bygone era as far as you know these sweeping epic films that were made at one point, for the film going public. But Ron is just such a masterpiece. I have it on Blu-ray. This I don't know why I grabbed this one, but this I do have this on DVD. This was the first time I ever bought this movie. I do have it on Blu-ray, and there are some really great special features. There's some really good documentaries, particularly around a couple of different film historians. But just amazing. Totally immersive. Totally, it's like the definition of of a transcending experience watching one of his films, especially Ron. So, thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.